I've covered numerous HOA horror stories on this channel in the past because I like to warn everybody about what they could potentially be facing and getting themselves into if you buy any sort of home in an HOA community, whether it is a condo with a condo association or a townhome with an HOA, or even just a normal neighborhood like this that has an HOA community. Because some of them are actually really great and are run extremely well by really smart and talented people that know how to balance budgets and have sensible rules and laws, but others are just flat out insane. And in my experience as a real estate agent, I mostly dealt with condo associations more than HOAs, but they're all sort of the same thing. And I can tell you that the majority of them are absolutely horrible. Here's a perfect example of it right here. Here's a woman in California who wanted to fix a doorway inside of her condo, and the HOA would not allow her to do it, but she did it anyway. So she went ahead and went against the HOA's rules and regulations. Somehow the manager was able to peek into her apartment through an open garage door, and he saw the renovation happen. And the very next day, she received a notice of a $100 fine for the first day, but then every subsequent day after that would be $500 per day. In other words, $3,500 per week in fines. Can you imagine having an HOA fine you $500 a day for some simple violation like that? And there's so many different things at play here. Like the first thing is, how much of a jerk the manager is to, actually implement such steep fines for something as simple as changing a doorway. Why can't you just look the other way? Like, what do you care? It's not affecting your life in any way, right? But these people, they want everybody to follow the rules. Now, California is actually the state that has more HOA communities than any other state in the country. There are more than 50,000 HOA communities here in California. That's why we have to talk about this, especially since a lot of brand new communities are being built as HOAs. So that's going to be the majority of choices a lot of people are going to have in the future. And of course, Florida comes in at a close second right behind California with how many HOAs are in the state. So this is very relevant whether you're watching me from California or Florida, doesn't matter, because both places are subject to these ridiculous problems. In a separate instance, in San Ramon down in Contra Costa County, a woman was fined for replacing her lawn with drought-tolerant plants. In an HOA community in Oakland, they are installing surveillance cameras to track cars and sharing the data with police, which I guess over there, you probably need that. But back to this woman who was getting a $500 per day violation at her HOA. Pretty soon after that, they were able to find additional violations to slap her with. She got a separate violation for installing an EV charger. She got another violation for having a dog. But for once, California actually came to the rescue here by passing AB 130. On July 1st, AB 130 went into law here in California. And what it does is it caps the fines at $100 per violation unless it's a health or safety issue. HOAs are not allowed to collect interest or late fees on these violations moving forward. And HOAs must allow homeowners to fix issues before they get disciplined. Homeowners are also entitled to request internal dispute resolution if they disagree with the board rulings. So this woman got extremely lucky because instead of getting fined $500 per day or $3,500 per week, because this just happened back in July that this law passed, and shortly before that is when she got the first $100 fine that was supposed to turn into $500 a day. Well, this new law in California actually voided that $500 per day fine, capping her penalty at only $100 for the entire violation. Might be kind of hard to tell, but you got the Golden Gate Bridge over there covered in fog, and you got the fog shrouding all of San Francisco over there. You can just kind of see the very top of the Salesforce Tower, some of the other buildings up there. Now, I think this is actually a huge win for California, and it's very rare to ever say or think that more people should start looking at what California is doing, because most of the things that they do here are just outright insane and crazy and end up costing everybody a ton of money with little to no benefit in the end. But when it comes to this new HOA law, I love it because this is going to prevent so much abuse of power in so many different HOAs moving forward. And it's going to save people a ton of money. And it's also going to stop people from losing their homes due to egregious HOA boards. However, because each violation is only limited to $100 and you can't keep refining people for the same thing, then it also puts people in a position, kind of like the landlord-tenant laws here, where bad actors can get away with misbehavior without much recourse from the HOA. And what some HOA boards here in California are looking to do already in reaction to this news is that they plan to reclassify some of their violations as health or safety risks in order to allow for higher fines, which means that they're going to have board meetings and they're going to have to change the bylaws and rules and regulations of a lot of these HOAs and condos if they want to reclassify some of these fines and violations so they can collect more money, which also can lead to abuse on behalf of the HOA. If they can just reclassify almost everything, even petty violations, as a health or safety issue, then that's not right either. An example of some of the rules that are currently in existence that could end up being changed over to a health or safety violation are things like having an aggressive pet or speeding through the neighborhood. Things like that could generate fines over $100. But overall, I think this is fantastic because it gives homeowners a chance to regain some control over their home. You know, it's not right that these HOA communities can just keep fining people for petty little things to the point where the fines add up so much where they're able to put a lien on someone's property and sometimes even foreclose on them because the balance gets too high. I've never liked that. I thought that was wrong. Unless, you know, you're not paying your HOA dues, something like that, that makes sense, sure. But when it comes to fines for breaking some of the rules, then I don't agree with that. Because I think we can all agree that most of the rules and regulations at these HOAs are just ridiculous anyhow. When you really go through and read them and you see how many of them are really enforced in real life, it's kind of a joke. I can vouch and certainly say that is the situation at my condo in Miami. You know, they have all the different rules and regulations, and, you know, a fraction of it ever really gets enforced because people are just kind of expected to behave and do the right thing. And for the most part, people do. And it's kind of a lax environment. You know, you don't have anybody going around and writing everybody violations day after day for just the smallest little minute thing. But this is the one instance I can say that I wish Florida would take a look at what California is doing and implement a similar law over there, because we definitely need it. We have egregious HOAs over there too that take advantage of the homeowners all the time. In fact, a lot of the HOA horror stories often come from Florida and Georgia, most of the ones I've talked about in the past. So here's a rare instance where they can actually learn something from California and take a page from their book. But if you think HOAs are bad and you think those are a ripoff, let's talk about home warranties for a little bit. We haven't talked about those in a while. And every time I talk about home warranties on this channel, I always see a big divide in the comments. You have some people who swear by them, especially investors. I had a landlord once that, you know, said, oh, if you have any problems, call the home warranty company, everything's covered. You know, some of them swear by having this, you know, even homeowners who live in the house and have had good experiences with them. Others, not so much. I've never personally had a home warranty, so I don't have personal experience with this. But every time I hear one of these stories, it reminds me of why I've never been interested in getting one. Here's a guy in Austin, Texas that bought a home and it came with a home warranty. And in a lot of transactions, home warranties are used as incentives for buyers because right off the bat, you don't have to worry about buying this house and having major issues with appliances or the heating and cooling systems, the water heater, other big ticket items that could break shortly after you move in. Even if the inspection looks good, things happen, right? But just like any other type of insurance business, the claims that you're allowed to make always come with somewhat of a caveat. And also the things that are covered and are not covered are often listed in the fine print. And that's how these companies get away with not paying people, just like any other insurance company. So this guy in Austin, Texas decided to keep renewing his home warranty through American Home Shield after he received exceptional service. So far, sounds pretty good. He had a claim for a broken garage door opener and a malfunctioning oven. And he said it was worth the annual fee of about $2,500 as of August of 2024. Also, quick correction. I kept saying this guy's in Austin, Texas, but Austin is his last name. He's in Louisiana. I read that wrong. Anyways, doesn't matter. The part that does matter is he's in Louisiana, another hot state, and his air conditioner broke recently. And so he called up the home warranty company, and he says it has just been a nightmare, and he spent more than 100 hours on the phone trying to resolve his claim. Now, I don't know why all of a sudden it's such a huge problem to get this claim resolved over any of the other ones he's had in the past, but that's what's happening. And this is not a unique situation. You know, thousands of people have filed complaints against home warranty companies since 2019, and there have been complaints filed with the Federal Trade Commission as well against these companies. Like in Texas, for example, there have been more than 1,500 consumer filed complaints against home warranty companies with the state's attorney general. There's been over 800 in Tennessee and over 700 in Illinois. And apparently, getting denied for a brand new AC unit is a very common denial from these home warranty companies. There was another complaint in South Carolina where a home warranty company refused to pay for the full cost of replacing a broken stove, and instead they offered the customer a $338 Lowe's gift card, which hardly put a dent in the $6,000 replacement cost. And can you imagine getting screwed like that? That is just awful. And I guess these companies are able to get away with this because they don't actually get classified as insurance. They say technically it's not insurance when it comes to the law, and it's kind of a Wild West scenario with these home warranty companies. And let's face it, these home warranties are not getting any cheaper, okay? 5-10 years ago, you'd be paying anywhere between $500 and $700 annually for the home warranties. Now you're probably looking at $2,500 a year and up. So back to the guy who had the broken air conditioner in Louisiana, they finally came out to replace the condenser and the evaporator coil, but 1 month later, the system broke again, and he called the home warranty company a second time for another repair. And this time, the company refused to cover the $4,400 repair, so he probably needed a new unit. American Home Shield only offered him $560.55 toward the repair. So these companies are kind of putting people in this position where, you know, take it or leave it. We're giving you a little so you can kind of cover a small portion of your expenses, or we'll give you nothing. And if you don't like it, then you can sue us, is kind of the attitude that these companies are taking with people, which I think is just awful. And that's why I wanted to bring it to your attention, because some people love these home warranty companies, but you know, not everybody's having good experiences with them. And this guy did the right thing. He started filing complaints with the state attorney general and the Federal Trade Commission and the Better Business Bureau to try and get the word out that this is a problem, and also talking to the media outlets and posting these issues on social media as well. And actually putting a legitimate complaint against a company on bbb.org is a great thing to do, because if they do not respond to that complaint, then automatically the company gets downgraded on their rating. So they kind of are in a position where they have to respond to your complaint on there or take the hit. And the BBB will actually take the complaint to the company and give them 14 days to resolve the issue with the customer. And a lot of times they do come to a solution that works for everybody. But if you are going to get one of these home warranties, you need to ask a ton of questions up front. You need to be asking, you know, what's covered? Is my fridge covered? Is the dishwasher covered? Is my sump pump covered? Is my heating and air conditioning covered? That seems to be the biggest one that they don't want to pay for. And if there's kind of like vague answers and not really any clarity to what's covered, definitely walk away. And this guy who couldn't get the air conditioner fixed from American Home Shield, the Attorney General's office in Louisiana actually handled the complaint and received a notice from American Home Shield that said this repair was not covered because his agreement does not provide any coverage for any modification to any item that is not identified as a covered item in the plan summary. So all this mumbo jumbo, right? Like, I don't even know what that means. I'm sure most people don't either. When you hear that, it's like, what are you talking about? But these are the type of little language tricks that they use in their contracts to get out of paying claims, just like a lot of other type of insurance companies do. In the end, he ended up getting a $2,400 check from the American Home Shield warranty, which was still only about half the cost that it actually took to replace that AC unit. So that was the best he could do, even after making all of these complaints. And even by receiving that check came with one final catch. And it says right on the check, by cashing this check, you acknowledge that we have fulfilled your service request for the applicable covered item. So they're kind of like blackballing you into a corner to say, yeah, I guess I'm satisfied even though I'm not, just by cashing the check. Now, 43 states do have laws that govern home warranty companies to some degree, but the regulations vary quite a bit, and it ranges anywhere from some states requiring home warranty companies to register, and that's it, while others oversee the consumer contract terms. And then of course there's 7 other states that don't have any regulations for home warranty companies. So that could be the reason why some people have pretty good experiences with these home warranty companies and other people don't, because it seems like an industry that needs more regulation. And that's even kind of crazy to even hear coming out of my mouth, because for the most part, it seems like everything is over-regulated, especially in a state like here in California. But in this case, I would say that it's definitely something that needs more regulation, because if some states really hunker down on the language that can be in the contract and kind of prevent all of this abuse from the company, then I think that's a good thing. Versus other states don't do anything and just maybe charge them a fee to register. That's not helping anything. That just helps the state collect more money. The only caveat is every state does have a law for deceptive sales practices, and some state regulators do use those laws to go after home warranty companies that try to take advantage of their customers. One more view for you guys. Got the East Bay over there, and you got Angel Island across from Tiburon. By the way, I'm walking at one of these top streets here in Tiburon. That's how we get these views. Now let's switch gears a little bit here and talk about the cost of living in Florida for a minute, because the genesis of my YouTube channel was actually largely surrounding the cost of living in Florida, talking about all the different expenses that we have there. And for a while, living in Florida was relatively inexpensive, up until the pandemic, of course, which ended up being the case everywhere. But a new set of data just came out from Smart Asset saying if you want to live a comfortable life in Florida, you need to be making $97,000 a year. And that is just mind-blowing to me, because if you go back and you look at some of the old videos on my YouTube channel, I have videos talking about how you can live on the beach for 50 grand a year. You know, here's where you can buy oceanfront houses for 250 grand or less, or houses that were within a mile of the beach. That used to be a thing before the pandemic and all this inflation came along. The numbers that they're using to come up with this is 50% of your income going towards necessities, 30% for discretionary spending, and 20% for long-term goals such as retirement or repaying debt. And Smart Asset defines living comfortably as being able to afford hobbies, vacations, retirement savings, education funds, and the occasional emergency, in addition to the necessities like housing, groceries, transportation, and medical expenses, of course. So being able to comfortably afford all of your everyday expenses and be able to enjoy life is essentially the definition. So yeah, do you technically need $97,000 a year to live in Florida? No, you don't. But to live a nice, good life and feel like you're living the good life, yeah, you do. And keep in mind, this is the number for just a single adult. That's the most alarming thing about this, okay? A family of 4 would need to be earning a whopping $217,000 a year to live a good life in Florida. And if you take a look at this list here, I'll scroll it down the screen. You know, Florida is actually one of the cheaper states, you know, compared to many of the others. Hawaii is at the top and California is number 3, but many other states that are not even on the coast, like Colorado, for example, or Arizona, their cost of living is even higher if you want to live the good life over there. And of course, the draw of living in a place like California or Florida is the weather, the amount of things to do, the lifestyle, things like that. And there was some interesting data that came out talking about how if you live within 30 miles of the ocean or the Gulf somewhere, basically a large body of water, then your life expectancy goes up. Now, ever since I first moved from the Midwest to Miami Beach back in 2008, intuitively I knew something just felt good about waking up and seeing the ocean every day. It was inspiring. It made me want to go outside more. It made me want to do things, right? It gave me the feeling like I want to work hard so I can enjoy this, and live that good life. And now here I am, spending summers in California and enjoying the good life in Florida the rest of the year. And I love it. And it's inspiring, even walking through these mountain roads here with these sweeping views of Richardson Bay and San Francisco Bay, blue skies like this, the color of the water is so beautiful and so inspiring to me to this day that between those things and all of the comments and all the viewer feedback I get from you guys makes me want to get up every day and do this. I love doing this. I love making these videos for you guys. I love staying current on all the latest housing market and economic news, keeping you guys posted of what's happening. It's just fantastic. And I think living near the water has been a part of that inspiration for my life to do this every day. And I definitely attribute it to part of my success, a large part of it actually. I don't think I would be the same person or have the same level of success if I would have just stayed living in Belvedere, Illinois my entire life, landlocked area, surrounded by farms, not a whole lot of economic opportunity. I don't think I'd be doing this right now, most likely. I would never even thought about doing something like this. Anyways, they say that if you live near the coast, life expectancy goes up by at least 1 year, but sometimes longer. And this doesn't apply if you live next to a large lake either. So we're talking only the coast for some reason. And they say it's due to a variety of factors like milder temperatures, better air quality, more opportunities for recreation, better transportation, less susceptibility to drought, and higher incomes are all contributors to the higher life expectancy. People also have higher levels of physical activity, lower obesity rates, and improved heart health. And I can agree to that too. I mean, look what I'm doing here. I'm outside, breathing fresh air, walking these mountain roads. People ask how many steps I get a day. I've shared with you guys that on the channel. I'll put a screenshot up of my latest weekly average. But on average, I get a little over 10,000 steps a day, which accounts for the days I don't walk as much. Because on the days I do walk, I usually walk anywhere between 12 and 15,000 steps. And sometimes that's up these mountains, I could burn 700, 800, 900 calories on a hike if I'm hiking for an hour and a half or 2 hours on these mountains here, and it just feels great. But anyways, I know not everybody can live on the coast, and I'm not saying you have to. I just thought it was interesting news to point out because so many people do want to live in Florida and California and these other beautiful coastal areas. That's why the cost of living in these places is so high, and that's why you need almost 100K a year now to live the good life in Florida. So if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe to the channel. And if you don't want to wait for my next video to come out, check out this one on the screen right over here, and I'll see you in the next one.